Hi, my name is Michael Hall, and this is the Leadership Code.
There's a story not many people talk about a man from Yorkshire named John Smeaton. Now, Smeaton isn't a household name. He wasn't a king, a general, or a politician. But in the 1700s, he became one of the first people to truly redefine what it really meant to build something that lasts. He grew up in Yorkshire, the son of a lawyer, and was expected to follow a traditional path. But instead, he chose something different. He followed curiosity. He became an engineer, and at a time when engineering wasn't even fully recognized as a profession. One of his greatest challenges came when he was asked to rebuild the Eddystone Lighthouse off the coast of England, a structure that had been destroyed multiple times by storms. It was dangerous, unpredictable work, but many believed it couldn't be done. But Smeaton did something different. He studied nature, he observed how trees held their ground, how roots adapted to the force of the wind, and instead of forcing his ideas onto the environment, he adapted to it. He built the lighthouse to move with pressure, not against it, and it stood. But what makes this story powerful isn't just the engineering, it's the mindset. Smeaton wasn't the loudest voice in the room. He wasn't driven by recognition. He was driven by purpose, by responsibility, and by the quiet determination to create something meaningful, something that would protect lives long after he was gone. He was also known to be deeply grounded in his personal life, someone who valued stability, family, and integrity just as much as his work. And in many ways, his story reminds us that leadership isn't always about commanding attention. Sometimes it's about adapting, building quietly, and creating something strong enough to withstand the storms for the people who depend on it. And that's exactly what today's conversation is about. Because today's guest also began his story in England and made a life-changing decision to step into a completely different world here in El Salvador, building a life, a career, and a family far from where it all started. A man who has led in different environments, adapted through the challenges, and stayed grounded in what truly matters. Because today's guest also began his story in England, Michael Hall made a life-changing decision to step into a completely different world, building a life, a career, and a family far from where it all started. A man who has led in different environments, adapted through changes, and stayed grounded in what truly matters. Welcome to the Leadership Code. So today's conversation is a special one. Our guest was born in Bridlington, East Yorkshire, England, but life had a bigger journey in mind. After building his early roots in the UK, he made a bold move that would shape the rest of his story, making El Salvador his adoptive home for more than 3 decades. From working across multiple manufacturing industries to raising a family of 4 alongside his wife Roxana, he represents a powerful example of resilience, adaptability, and quiet leadership. He's also someone I deeply respect on a personal level, my father-in-law, a man who tells things as they are, thinks deeply about history and daily politics, and leads first with care for people. Please welcome Michael Hall. Hi Michael, how are you?
So far, so good.
How's today?
Well, I've just had a brief stay here in El Salvador for basically the last 3 months, and I shall be returning to the UK in a couple of days' time.
Okay.
Then thinking about my next trip back here towards next Christmas.
Well, we can't wait to have you back. So hopefully, time will fly, and we'll see you soon. Right. So, Probably many of you that are listening do not know this, but like I said in my intro, Michael is my father-in-law. He recently came to our wedding, and it's been a joy having him here. I can proudly say and call him my father-in-law, and it's just a joy having all these conversations. And one of the reasons I'm having this leadership code episode with him is because there is tons of lessons and things that we can all learn in regards to his experience. So first, Michael, I would like to ask you, like, going back to when you were a child, what was that like for you that you can
Well,
remind me?
I had a working class upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
My mother came from upper middle class. My father was working class.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in Bridlington. We lived in a 2-room apartment. And for the first 10 years of my life, actually. But even at that time, I had this urge, if you like, to work. So even before I was 10, I was already earning my pocket money. But yes, a person like me, we don't collect friends. We move on and we start again. And it's very sad, really, in a sense. I look back on my time in Bridlington as very formative in my life.
Yeah.
Because I was working class, if I wanted anything in life, I had to go out and earn it.
Yeah.
Even before I was 10.
Right.
So I had all sorts of little jobs in those days just to earn pocket money. And that's sort of been the way of my life, if you like. And at that time, I think my education was, as we say, de rigueur. It was necessary, but it wasn't something that really formed an identity, if you like. And how can I say it? It didn't channel me in a certain way because I was always looking, I suppose, for an opportunity in reality.
Mm-hmm.
So and that is something that I suppose I've carried a little bit for the entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really had a straightforward career path, and in a sense, and so I have this, I suppose, diversity and depth of experience that not all employers are looking for necessarily as well.
Yeah, usually they want someone that would last years and make a career sometimes in the business. But is that something that was learned from someone, or was that a personal choice that you made in regards to having that type of mindset that you always needed to move on, or where did that come from?
Well, I'd like to blame somebody else, but I you know, no, I think it was just in my character, really.
Mm-hmm.
After a short period of time, I found that any job that I had in my life always had an element of repetition.
Mm-hmm.
And after a period of time, it sort of, the novelty wore off, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so I was always looking for new challenges. That was the thing. So whenever I changed a job to another career, it was always something new for me and something that I could get my teeth into and learn. That was always really important.
Okay. Staying still on topic in regards to your childhood, something that I think we all have is those traits that come from our parents, right? Values that they teach us. What are some of those values that you have carried on throughout your life that your parents brought to you or taught you?
My father was, when I was a child, was what they used to call a traveling salesman.
Mm-hmm.
He would, and in those days, of course, I mean, salaries, I'm talking the early 50s and the late 40s, salaries were not like they are today. And so in order for my parents to have a little extra in life, you might say, and in those days an extra would be like having your own car, for argument's sake,
Right.
having a TV,
Mm-hmm.
simple things like that. And for that matter, even food on the table, because I could still remember the end of the war and up to the mid-50s, we were still having, food was still on, it wasn't readily available. It
was a
was
bit
rationed.
sparse.
It was
Yeah.
rationed. Even those. I mean, rationing didn't finish till the mid-50s in England.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you wanted anything special in life and have some enjoyment and not simply struggle, my father did give me a good lesson in a way, because at some points he could be having 2 or 3 jobs at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, my mother. They were quite menial jobs as far as my mother was concerned. We were living in Bridlington, which was a seaside town, for holiday makers. So there was always that period in the year when there was a lot of work to hand. But of course, off season, it was difficult. So it could be difficult. It could be difficult. And very difficult for my mother, because she did come from a good middle class background, and my father, as I say, came from a working class background. My grandfather was a postman, and my grandmother worked for the Salvation Army.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, my grandmother was the local cook at one of the schools, one of our local schools. So she also had that sort of mentality to diversify, if you like, in order to be able to have the creature comforts in life.
Yeah,
that was it.
And also I think that's the value of serving others, right? Because I think during that time after the war, for her to be serving others in the Salvation Army, I think also, I don't know if you see it as an example, based on what I know about you, that you also do tend to care for others, and I see that whenever we're around other people, there's always that caring factor of how can I help, and not being selfish. Is that something that you think also your grandparents?
It's not something that I consciously do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's basic humanity, if you like,
Right.
and I'm not a selfish person. And contrary to what I thought when I was younger, actually money isn't important. What's important to me is how you live your life.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the biggest joys is when somebody turns around like yourself and recognizes the fact that actually one isn't selfish. It's not something that I consciously recognize, if you like. It's just the way I was brought up.
Yeah.
And most certainly in my family, and of course I lived with my paternal grandmother and grandfather, there was always that element of selflessness. I think that's the word.
Yeah.
Because they were never rich, but they were always, in a way, they were, because of this attitude,
the community,
the community thing, and that goes along with the type of life that she did have. And she was in the Salvation Army basically from the 1900s. I mean, it was her life, and she couldn't change it. That was it. So my grandfather was her husband, and she was quite a strong lady, of course, with very, very dominant, not necessarily opinions, but she was a very dominant lady anyway, but in a nice way.
Yeah. Okay.
I still remember my nursery rhymes. She taught me them.
Really?
Yes.
Would you like to sing one for us?
Oh my goodness. Hang on a second. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 24 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was open, the birds began to sing, and down came the blackbird and pecked off her nose, something like that. Anyway.
Oh, that's good.
But I still remember a lot of them, and I remember being sat on her knee.
And how old were you when she would sing these rhymes to you?
I promise you, I mean, she was a little lady, and I couldn't, and so I was a little boy when I sat on her lap, So probably about 3 or 4 years of age, but I can still remember a lot of nursery rhymes she taught me even then.
That's cool. Well, thank you for that. Now, you were mentioning, right, that you were not someone that had a lot of friends when you were a kid, but during school, how would you describe yourself as, when you were a student? Curious, quiet, a little bit of rebellious, mischievous? How was that period for you?
Oh, I was, initially I neglected
Mm-hmm.
my schooling. I didn't really take it too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Was I getting into trouble? No, not really. But I wasn't the best student.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think at that age, you don't necessarily understand the consequences
Right.
of your actions in the long term. It's always, you're thinking about tomorrow and what am I going to do?
Yeah. And adventures, right?
And my life was always full of adventure, of course.
Ah.
I mean, that was one of the things that did get me into trouble on quite a lot of occasions.
Mm-hmm.
But no, my early education was not particularly fruitful. That was something that came along a little later in my life when I realized that if I was to continue the way I was, my life wasn't going to amount to much.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a rude awakening for me. And it only happened when I left school early and the type of jobs that I had initially.
Mm-hmm.
And then deciding that this is not how I wanted the rest of my life to be.
Yeah.
And so then I went to a technical college actually.
Mm-hmm.
And from there my education sort of blossomed. But it was from that rude awakening, having worked farm labouring, worked as a petrol pump attendant, worked as a brickie on a building site. I mean, that type of menial sort of work, which I did very well because I was a healthy, strapping young boy.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't. I could see that was not going to make my life very fulfilling.
Yeah. Now, talking about like that shift, right? Because I think we all have those moments that awakening, right? When
it was like an epiphany, really.
Yeah.
I mean, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I came back to my family. I'd left them for a year. I'd gone through one of the hardest winters on record in about 1963.
Yeah.
And I was welcomed home. I came back at 15 years of age, that's right, and started school again. And I have to say that actually I found that schooling was easier than struggling as a farm labourer picking up potatoes in the fields, you know. So
but what was that conversation like with yourself? Because obviously I think we have that moment to ourselves to kind of, reevaluate where we're standing. So for you, how was that shift from, those jobs to taking school seriously and I guess reshaping your future, right? From that point on.
When you are really struggling in life,
mm-hmm.
if you're a sensible person, for the want of a word, a right-thinking person, you do question yourself, and you do ask yourself, is this going to make me happy?
Yeah.
And of course, at that point, I mean, whilst I didn't have too many friends, I had a lot of acquaintances. Mm-hmm. And of course, they'd taken their education a little bit more seriously than me. And I could see that they had the sort of life that I would possibly like. Mm-hmm. So that I would most certainly like. And so it was out of necessity, let's say.
Yeah.
Either I was going to fail in life, and I knew I was failing. I was flailing, in actual fact. I mean, I was struggling. I was drowning, to be honest with you. But realizing that if I wanted more out of life, and thinking ahead as well, not too far ahead. I mean, even at that stage, at 14, I wasn't thinking about marriage or anything like that. But the ordinary things that most teenagers want in life, to be able to go out and enjoy oneself, and have girlfriends and have clothing and things like that. And those things for certain, my parents were not necessarily going to provide for me. Mm-hmm. I'd have to, unless of course they would say that it was in their interests at the end of the day, because my parents were very practical.
Yeah.
I mean, as I say, my father would, I was a mirror image of him, if you like, in that we were both having to do multiple jobs in order to survive. And by the time I was 14 or 15, my father was doing extraordinarily well. So he was a bit of a role model for me in a way.
Yeah.
And so were my friends. They were doing better than me.
Yeah. Now, how was your that after that transition? So I assume jobs got better, probably income also improved. Right? So that period, what new lessons did that bring to you during, after that point of time where you started to take things more seriously?
I'm not so sure we're jumping the gun here because obviously I'd spent 3 years. I mean, I had no education to speak of. I had to start again. And so I spent 3 years in a technical college. And I came out of that and I don't know whether the listener knows about the British system of education, but in order to get to university, you have to have what they used to call A-level passes in the GCE education.
Mm-hmm.
And that was advanced anyway. And I was very fortunate. I did very well. And I could have gone to university. But I couldn't afford to go to university.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and my father said, no, we've given you an education now. You make the best of what you've got and you're on your own. But by good fortune, the first job I took, the company offered me what they used to call a sandwich course. And I was permitted to go to university on 1 day a week, a working week, and I was paid for it. And so they basically paid for my education.
Wow.
In my third year at uni, I got a Becker and I ended up in Switzerland, in Lausanne.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, I came back to England. I took my final, and I was very fortunate. And to my great surprise, I got a second-class honours in economics. That was basically my springboard, if you like.
Yeah.
And it was a reward in a sense that I acknowledged and realised that if I was to continue working hard, that I would have these sort of benefits, if you like, in life.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that, that type of upbringing, hardworking, right? And you kind of have to fight for the things that you want, right? So the big question, I guess, and probably I'm pretty sure that a lot of people have asked you this, but what brought you to El Salvador?
Well, it was a near-run thing, really, because by that time, when I was in England, I was in media. I'd gone from banking to tourism.
Mm-hmm.
I went into engineering and went back to banking, all in a period of about 5 or 6 years.
So diversifying your roles, I guess.
Yes. I mean, in a sense, I mean, not consciously. I mean, the thing is, it was this thing that drove me as a child, and that is that I have to be given challenges, and the work that I was having just wasn't fulfilling those things for me, and so there was, from my way of thinking, there was no enjoyment in going to work with those particular companies in my past, and then I got into media, and that was a different lifestyle altogether. It was less regimented, and it was more. I mean, there were people that a bit like myself from very humble beginnings that have come up through the ranks, you might say, and were doing extraordinarily well. It was vital. It was full of life, and it wasn't mundane and tedious like some of the other work I did.
Right.
Starting off as a systems analyst many years before, and I'd sort of progressed into publicity, and it was just a monumental change. It just opened up things. But I was working in the city of London. And the thing is about media is that it tends to be for young people. And I'm talking people in their 20s. And when you're getting to the age of 40, the opportunities, let's say, were not quite as diverse as they used to be. I was no longer the pick of the crop on many things. And because my career wasn't going as quickly as I wanted it to,
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to take up a job as an associate in a Casa de Representaciones, a house of representations in El Salvador, starting in coffee. Once again, a complete, absolutely
Different.
monumental change.
Yeah.
I'd never been in it before, but it just appealed to me, the challenge, if you like. And I was very fortunate that the president of the company just saw something in me that he said, you can do it.
But you were still in England.
I was still in England, yeah. Actually,
Okay.
I was, at that time, my wife was working for the Salvadoran embassy in London. I was, and the reason I got this introduction was because I'd
It was
become...
through Roxana.
No. I was initially secretary, and then I became president of the Anglo-Central American Society, which was an organization set up to promote the culture, if you like, and the economy of the 5 Central American countries, later to be joined by Panama. And we had visiting delegations, and I had that introduction on one occasion. And I said that I'd rather, it appealed to me to go to live in El Salvador because I knew the civil war there was going to finish, and that the economy was coiled like a spring. And I knew it was going to take off. And so when I had this opportunity, I jumped at it, to be honest with you. And for me, it was a wonderful start because, as you know, El Salvador is a very small country. It's about the size of Yorkshire, which is a department in England, and it was very family orientated.
Yeah.
And so industry throughout the country was family orientated, and it all commenced in coffee, of course.
Yeah.
So the fact that I went into coffee, I met all the influential families in this country and became acquainted with them.
Well, back in the day, they called it the gold, right? The gold of El Salvador. Coffee, during that period was
run by the Catorcium.
Yeah.
The families, the 14 families.
Yeah.
So
now, just before we get into those details, I'm just very curious, and probably our listeners too, because what were your first impressions when you landed here in El Salvador? When you saw our culture, how the country was, what was the first things that came to your mind?
Simple things. I mean, when I first arrived here 7 years before, sorry to backpedal, one of the things that several things impressed me. Incredibly industrious people that were setting up little small businesses. On the face of it, wouldn't seem like businesses, but they were incredibly industrious and hardworking people. And that always was a singular impression that I had with the people. They were just incredibly hardworking. And the other thing is that, I mean, going back to those days, and of course El Salvador has changed a great deal now, most people lived in adobe houses and corrugated houses.
Right.
They were always incredibly well dressed and took pride in their appearance, and they were always clean. And God knows how they did it. And I mean, there were such little things that impressed me so much. Even from my first visit here in 1983, I had this sneaking admiration for the country, and I knew that it was going to happen. That the country would not just survive, but would prosper.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me as a Salvadorian, it really touches my heart to hear that, right? When people realize about that of our culture, of our people, and I think you and I have talked about this, that sometimes we take that for granted. Us living in this country, and sometimes we fail to realize that virtue of hardworking Salvadorians, right? Fellow citizens. So, on behalf of El Salvador, I thank you for those kind words. So that was really nice.
I never took it for granted.
No, but that's what I'm saying. We do, sometimes, we live here, and sometimes we take things for granted. And we only realize it when people from the outside come in and observe those things, right? So what was the most difficult adjustment culturally for you when you got here?
Speaking Spanish.
The language?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have any education in Spanish, and even today it's not particularly brilliant, but I muddle through.
Mm-hmm.
But my education was in the manufacturing plants, in the lines,
Yeah.
talking to the people and working with them. But I have to confess that the reason I always got these jobs was because I spoke English, and of course the main customer for the country was the United States. So it was an opening for me, if you like.
Right.
As you know, I gravitated into manufacturing eventually. So there is a vocabulary to all manufacturing concerns, and so you tend to pick up that vocabulary and speak quite fluently, if you like, even in Spanish.
So you didn't have any issues with the food?
With the food?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
It was just the language.
No, I mean that's something else. I have fortuitously, I had an iron constitution. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yes.
So you often, and obviously, for those that are listening, you and I obviously talk a lot about this, but you often call El Salvador your adoptive home. You love this country, but what does it mean to you personally, El Salvador?
That's a difficult one. Well, first off, it's my home. I don't feel uncomfortable here at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe other people would disagree with it. I don't feel that I'm discriminated against in any way. And to use an old-fashioned word, I find the people charming here. So in the main, and they're very respectful. So that's something that I appreciated coming from England, because it was, as a child, it was quite common to be greeted with a good morning and a good afternoon and things like that. And of course, that's not something that happens in the UK these days. I mean, they're just little things, really. And plus the fact that actually I prospered here.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled for a while, but eventually I prospered here.
Yeah.
And so there was a little hiatus in my career, you might say, from leaving England, because I was doing quite well in media, but it picked up, and I had this wonderful opportunity, you might say, that working with US companies as their point of contact with the local people here. I had the benefit of two worlds still. I'd been immersed into Salvadoran society and everything else. I had the opportunity of putting one foot in both camps, you might say.
Right.
And by and large, there were very good companies I worked for, and I was very fortunate.
Now let's jump into your career journey and leadership, because obviously the podcast is more about that, and the reason I probably haven't explained this in other episodes, but the reason why I'm doing this, because I love to hear stories about leadership, about that journey, the hardships, the lessons, right? So because I think in a way it helps shape future leaders, and I've always been appreciative of mentors, leaders that I currently have, that I've had in the past, that have dedicated that time to help me grow, right? And so I hope this is something that's being taken by our listeners, at least for those that want to embark in that journey of leadership, to hear these stories, and hopefully it will be some sort of lessons, reassurance that it's not always difficult, right? It's not always the hardships. Yes, there are trying times, but eventually, with consistency, you get out of that, right? And you flourish. So I want to get into that, because I think your journey is particularly special because of that. So you've worked in several manufacturing industries. What is something that those environments taught you in regards to people and operations as a leader, right? And managing several teams, not only here in El Salvador, but across countries.
Well, the type of work I was doing, I was responsible for basically for the manufacturing processes in multiple manufacturing outlets.
Mm-hmm.
I worked, generally speaking, I worked for wholesale manufacturers in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would place business down here, and I was the intermediary, you might say, between the management and in the local factories
Mm-hmm.
and the management in North America. I couldn't be in 10 different factories at the same time, if you understand me. So
Yeah.
the one thing I learned very early on is that I could only be as good as the team around me. And that's nothing new. I'm not teaching anybody anything new there by saying that, but it's very true. I just couldn't spread myself around. So I had a knack of developing very good, talented crew around me, you might say,
Mm-hmm.
that I could rely on. And of course, I was employed to get results and make sure that everything came out of the manufacturing plants on time and met their last ship dates and got into the United States, and so they could be distributed amongst their customers and get onto the rails in the outlets, this, that, the other. If I failed to do that, then the rails would be empty in the retail shops, you know.
Yeah, the
So there was a lot
consequences.
of there was always that pressure, if you like.
Yeah.
And I suppose one of the biggest assets, I suppose, that I could offer is because of my background and having this this wide experience, you might say, is that I recognized that I wasn't employed to report problems, that actually
Mm-hmm.
I was paid to
solve them.
to give solutions. That was the main thing, yes.
Yeah.
And that was something that I think my background really helped me with.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, I've worked from Mexico all the way down to Colombia. So I travel a lot with a lot of different types of factories, different management styles, worked with local owners,
Yeah.
worked with Koreans,
Yeah.
Japanese companies.
Yeah.
So there's been a wide variety, if you like. And yes, I mean, I can't really make it any simpler than that. You have to, and of course, having my finger on the pulse at all times, knowing exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you can do that, of course, is going back to the first point I made, is that it depends on your team. You're only as good as your team.
Yeah. I was talking to, well, in my previous episode for the Leadership Code, our regional vice president, he said something that I think is really important. I think it adapts really well to what you're saying. He was saying that one of the key aspects of building successful teams is having the ability to adapt to different regions, to different teams, right?
Different cultures.
Different cultures. And in your case, yeah, well, and for him as well, you know, from the States, El Salvador, Guatemala. Is that something that also happened to you? And how were you able to manage those difficult moments where, you know, you had somebody in Colombia, somebody in Mexico, you know, these different teams, and how were you able to juggle through giving the results, solving problems, perhaps a team was falling behind. So what was your strategy when you were facing those types of difficulties?
Actually, the fact is that I wasn't allowed to make excuses. I had to produce. I had to have results.
Yeah.
And you're right. Sometimes working with factories, they weren't always working in my interests, and I had to channel them, and sometimes be quite ruthless about it, in a sense. Otherwise, they would not respect me.
Yeah.
Respect comes into it a lot in this part of the world, having respect for somebody. If they were not fulfilling their obligations, their contractual obligations, then you sometimes had to be fairly brutal with them. In other words, it's an either or situation. Look, if you're just not going to produce on time, I'll have to put this work somewhere else.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it really boils down to those fundamental questions, I suppose. And so in the end, they knew that that if they were to do business with my company, me, then they would have to fulfill their duties as they agreed to do in the first place when they took the contracts.
Yeah.
So sometimes you had to be very strict with them. Otherwise, I might find that I was going into a factory one day expecting to find 15 lines of machines working for me, and I've only got 7 because they were worried about another customer that they had and getting their shipments out on time, and that I wasn't there, and so therefore they would shift the work around and put their work into my lines. And I mean, we're getting into the technicalities now, but that most certainly is one of the worst outcomes, you might say, that a lot of people in my work actually failed to do, and I didn't, and so that kept me working with the same factories for probably 10 or 15 years.
And I think that's something very common that you see in different teams, that sometimes they don't see the other end. A lot of jobs, I think, are on a personal level kind of selfish, that I'm working here for my family to provide, and tomorrow's going to be another day, right? But from a leadership perspective, things change, right? Because the responsibility is a bit bigger, and sometimes I think our teams don't see what would be the repercussions if something like that doesn't happen, right? If we don't deliver results, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not their responsibility, it's ours. And like you were saying, which I really love, is you weren't hired to make excuses. You were hired to provide solutions, and that obviously produce results, and that sometimes means taking those really difficult decisions, right? So what was your before you started into a leadership role? What was your perception about leadership, and how did that change over time when you were actually doing the job, and after years of experience, did that perception change after a period of time, or has it changed now even?
Well, I think early on in my career, leadership didn't necessarily come into it, because I tended to be a one-man band. And so I was only responsible for myself, you might say.
Yeah.
It was only later in life when I recognized, when I got certainly into manufacturing, that I was the leader of a team. And you have to lay out very clearly what their role is, and because I depended on them, basically.
Yeah.
If I couldn't rely on them, then I couldn't do my job properly. And then, as you go back to what you said, then my job would be in jeopardy, if you like.
Yeah.
So because I wouldn't be doing my job. But leadership is I go back to what I said. A lot of leadership, certainly in manufacturing, in my sphere of activity anyway, working with subcontractors, was a great deal to do with respect. You have respect for the people. I had respect for the people who were working for me, and they had respect for me for giving them work.
Right.
But if those two metas, those two objectives, didn't mesh, they didn't mesh, then the whole thing would fall apart.
Yeah.
And and of course, in my business, I was shipping out something like 1,000 containers a year in finished goods, finished clothing, apparel, because I was in the maquila business, the apparel business,
Mm-hmm.
and having to get things to arrive on time and so that they go through the warehouses that have all the quality checks in the United States, and then they be shipped out to the various major customers, the Macy's, the Targets, and so on and so forth. Everything had to be just in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So and of course, in my particular instance, I wasn't just responsible for the manufacturing. I was responsible for all the materials, the prime materials coming in, ensuring that there was enough of that to be able to go into the lines in order to make the production on time and to be complete, even down to the labeling and the quality control and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
and to getting the shipments to the ports. That was my job.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were talking about being like a liaison between the United States, some companies and the manufacturing company that you worked for in regards to delivering results, right? And I think like in any place, like in any job, sometimes things don't go the way we plan, right? So how was your process in terms of when things didn't go your way or when things didn't work out the way it was planned, talking specifically about failure? What was your process in dealing with that?
It sounds a little glib, but I wasn't permitted to fail.
Mm-hmm.
I had very good team in the United States. If I was short of materials for one reason or another, they would always ensure that I would get those materials eventually.
Mm-hmm.
As for the manufacturer, if the programs that they had were delayed, then it would be my job, if you like, to persuade them to give me additional capacity in the factories.
Mm-hmm.
And that boils down to having good
Good
relationships with the people
right?
as well.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, there were the sales department in the United States that were waiting on the finished goods. They would be giving me a poke with a pointed stick every now and again to say that are these things going to arrive on the due date, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It meant many a time shipments that had failed on quality, where I had to work overnight, where I had to work with the shipping companies and ask them to keep their drivers, their trucks, the articulated trucks, these large trucks, to have the drivers stay overnight, and so that when we eventually managed to get the goods to a standard quality that we required,
Mm-hmm.
we could ship them out, still get to the port on time. And so they had to liaise with the shipping companies as well, and which depended on a good relationship with them as well. So,
Yeah.
The whole job depended on a cadena, a chain
Yeah.
of good relationships at every stage, if you like.
Right. Right.
And so I have to say that I didn't fail.
It was all.
That sounds glib,
Like,
but I didn't.
but yeah, but that's what I was saying. I think you had a really good system in terms of preventing those things to happen, right? So, and that's something really rare in to see, obviously. So I think that's something that we'll all take in as a lesson,
Well,
and yeah, I think that
sorry to interrupt, but I think my philosophy on that was that if it could go wrong, it would.
yeah, yeah.
So you made sure it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it was difficult at times. I have to say that it was difficult.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna shift a little bit because obviously you as a person, you had obviously it's not all about just work, right? You're a family of four. You're a husband, and oftentimes that intertwines with our responsibilities, right, at work. So how were you able to balance work and family and maintain both worlds in a healthy environment?
Ooh, with difficulty,
Mm-hmm.
yes, because I could be away for 3 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
come home for a long weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and then go off for another 3 weeks. I think my wife was rather philosophical about it, because living in El Salvador, if you do have a good job, it's something to value.
Yeah.
And that it sometimes came at a cost.
Right.
And my wife was always, I think, aware that there were certain sacrifices, if you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, to use that expression, to being a little glib again, is that whatever time I had with her, we made the best of it, and that's it.
Yeah.
But it ensured that my children went to the best schools, of course,
Mhm.
and we had a good home.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not a country where social security can step in when you have a moment, when you get into difficulty. You're totally self-reliant. And I was very fortunate that for the best part of my working life, money has never, ever been a problem.
Yeah. Something that I've observed with, all your four kids, obviously Jessica, my wife, Michael, Brandon, and Damon. And I was talking with my mom about this, that holy cow, they are so educated, very well mannered, the most humble people that I've met. And that's really difficult to do when you have four kids, when you're busy as you were, away from home. But raising that type of children nowadays is something that it's really difficult to do. So how was that, and what were those challenges? There's a saying, obviously, behind every man there's this wonderful woman that supports us and gives us that strength, right? So how is Roxana's role also influential in your career and your success at work?
Well, in my absence, she was head of family.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife is a strong Salvadoran
Yeah.
woman. She was working
Mm-hmm.
as well. As you may recall, she was working at the British Academy and the
Mm-hmm.
administrative side there. And we had all our children go to the British Academy as well, so they became bilingual by the time they were 10.
Yeah.
Completely bilingual.
Yeah.
And today, of course, they speak English perfectly.
Right.
And as you say, I mean, 3 of my children now are back in the UK. They've all got responsible jobs, doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my daughter is married to you, but likewise, she's working in the same
Yeah.
rama, the same
Yeah.
field as you
Yeah.
might say. So it was a very successful combination, you might say.
Yeah.
But it could be difficult
Mm-hmm.
in that so much when problems did arise and I wasn't there,
Yeah.
I required, my wife had to be strong and she had to take responsibility in my absence. And there's no way around that. That is just the nature of my work. Because over the period of the years I was working, I was in New York, I was in North Carolina, I was in Tennessee, I was in Mexico, I was in Los Angeles, I was in Honduras and Guatemala,
Yeah.
Colombia.
Yeah.
So for my wife, it was just the way things were. And
Mm-hmm.
in my absence,
You had to adapt.
she had to adapt and she had to be strong. That's the thing, and she always has been, and you know that.
Oh yeah. Oh, she's lovely and fun, but I also see that strength in her, right? That something I really admire about all your four children is I think it has both sides, right? From you and from her, and obviously I think that part of education, it's well perceived. Whenever I talk with her, it's you kind of connect the dots, right? That, oh, okay, this is where it comes from. This is, these are the values that I see in them that you get when you're interacting with Roxana, right? So
my children have a lot of me in me, actually. So I do know that.
Yeah.
and they're all, in their own way, they're going through their evolution, you like say, their career evolution in a pretty similar way that I did. They do demand challenge, all of them.
Yeah.
And to my way of thinking anyway, that's always been one of the most important elements in my life, that I had to be challenged on something. I couldn't just take a job and just go. I had to look forward to Monday, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's a really cool feeling to have. So I totally get it. I'm going to ask you this following question. It might be a bit deep to answer, but it did get me thinking, because obviously I'm a father, and this is something that many of our listeners probably go through. But what kind of a father did you consciously try to be while raising your kids?
Ooh. I wanted my children to be willing to try their best at everything. I wanted them to challenge themselves.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to feel success in what they were doing. I wanted them to have all-rounded characters, in a sense, in so much that that's a difficult one. I wanted them to be independent. And it's for my way of thinking, it's the combination of those elements, if you like, that give them that grounding in life, that allows them to grow.
Yeah.
In their own way, in their own different directions.
Yeah.
As well, because they're all doing different things one way or another.
Yeah.
And I never wanted them to feel that they were failing in life. You know, that is a difficult one. My children could turn their hand to anything if they wanted to.
Okay. Now, looking back, what family moment are you most proud of that you didn't miss?
I was there at their birth. That was one of my proudest moments. I saw them before my wife saw them. I was very proud and wasn't always there for them when they started school. I was proud of them in sports. They were all good at sports. I was proud of them when they succeeded and went through to the next grade. I mean, they're just all the simple things in life that bringing up children.
Yeah.
I am proud of my children for what they do.
Yeah.
I'm proud of them in every sense and in every way. And I am not, they have never given me true reason to be disappointed in them. Small disappointments, always. That comes along with parenthood.
Yeah, of course.
But I am, in their own individual ways and in their diverse ways, they never fail to amaze me.
That was beautiful. Thank you. I think that one of the biggest fears that young folks trying to get into leadership roles, I think that one of the biggest fears talking about families is about the cost that it would take on their families, to embark in that journey of leadership because of their responsibility, because of hours of work away from home, right? So what advice would you give, those that have that fear in mind of, I mean, I would like to become a leader, but it's going to cost this on my family. What advice would you give them?
never be afraid to fail.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't try, you will never know. I can't put it any other way.
Yeah.
I want my children to feel strong enough and have the convictions to do their own thing.
Yeah.
And if they do fail, we as parents are always there for them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get into this segment, which is rapid fire questions. Okay. Try to answer them as best as you can. And this is going to be a really tough one, but the first thing that comes to your head, England or El Salvador?
El Salvador.
Okay. One historical figure you'd love to have dinner with?
Margaret Thatcher.
Okay. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
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 Yes. A daily. I don't know if I should ask it, but let's go. We're not gonna get into details anyway. But a daily political topic you think people misunderstand?
Oh, can I think about that?
Yeah.
About politics. Hell, how long is a ball of string? That politicians don't always have the electorate's best interests at heart.
Yeah.
That they are human beings and they make mistakes.
I 100% agree with that. Yes. If your children described you in one word, what do you think they would say?
Is that a one word or a quote?
It could be a quote. It's fine.
I recall being with my children and my youngest son saying, never feel insecure with us, Dad. We never wanted for anything in our life.
One life lesson York has taught you?
Oh, York. What, New York or Old York?
Old York.
Old York. York is a wonderful example of the continuation of life that goes through 2,000 years. Today's people are an end process, if you like, of those 2,000 years.
Yeah.
That, yes, I mean, that's York for me. York is forever.
Yeah. Okay. And what would be one life lesson El Salvador has taught you?
Oh, that El Salvador, like many countries, that you can hit many bumps in this country, but there is always an opportunity to not just survive, but to prosper in this country, despite the bumps.
Yeah. Yes. Now, my last question. So after decades of life, work, and fatherhood, and building a home, far from where you were born, what is something that you would like to leave as a legacy for your family, friends, younger generation that's coming behind us?
Well, my life hasn't finished yet. I think, like most people, one of our fears is that we're forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
When we go off to the happy hunting ground, I want to be remembered by my family.
Yeah.
And that's just a matter of fact for all families, in actual fact. But I don't feel that there's got to be an imposition, if you like, on my family that, that I set up some sort of annual lunch dinner for my birthday or anything like that, I just want my children occasionally to look back fondly on me. I don't demand anything else of them, because what they'll have in life, they began with me.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully they will go on and they will capitalize on that experience and make more of themselves than even I was.
Yeah. Well, I know they already have wonderful things to say about you, and I have no doubt that that will last and perdure in the years to come. So, Michael, it has been more than a conversation, like always. It's been a journey across countries, careers, and
Briefly.
yeah, and basically what truly matters in life, right? Is which is people making those connections and building those relationships. Thank you for sharing your story with honesty, clarity, but also on a personal level. I truly value your friendship, the conversations that we always have. I know this is not going to be our last one. I'm really looking forward for more in the future. And I wish you the best of luck in everything that you do. Have a great trip as well. I know that's coming pretty soon. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to meet again and enjoy your company.
Thank you very much. As always, your company is really, I love your company anyway.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Code podcast. Executive producer, Jose Navarro.